During a quiet dinner with my in-laws and husband, the house phone rang unexpectedly. It was an odd hour for a call. I answered, and a woman on the other end started speaking in a harsh tone. When I asked who she was, she yelled, "How dare you ask that? You're so rude. I can't know who you are if you don't introduce yourself," I replied. My in-laws exchanged concerned glances, and my husband motioned toward the phone, asking, "Do you want me to take it?" I shook my head. "I can handle this on my own." "Could you please tell me who you are?" I asked calmly once more. The woman became frantic. "I can't believe you don't know who I am. I won't buy your eggplants again. I'll start using cheap imports from now on, so goodbye." She didn't reveal her name, but I quickly figured it out when she mentioned eggplants. She was likely the wife of the president of the pickling company I'd been working with for 15 years, with whom we had an exclusive contract. After the president's death, she would be the one handling the business. It was tough to change things, especially with an exclusive contract in place. Our eggplants, grown locally, were special, and switching to imports could affect their quality. Consumers don't care whether the eggplants are local or imported. "I can get them for half your price. You're overcharging." Her words made me angry. Overcharging? My eggplants are unique, and their price is fair. You can't grow them in a home garden. It's unethical to sell affordable vegetables for such a high price. You should be thankful you're not being sued. I'm terminating the contract. What a rude person. Fueled by frustration, I shot back. "Are you sure you want to end the contract? Are you prepared for any regrets?" "No regrets. I'll make more money with cheaper imports. I'm glad to be rid of someone like you. Stay away." The call ended abruptly, and my concerned husband asked, "What happened, Laura?" We heard shouting. "Are you okay?" My mother-in-law looked uneasy. I began to explain. "I'm Laura, 49, a full-time eggplant farmer specializing in pickles. I've been married to my husband, the eldest son in a rice farming family, for over 20 years. Our daughter lives in the city for college, and our son just started his first job there. He said he'd return when he finds a bride, though I don't count on that much." My active in-laws, nearing 80, still farm rice on their family land, while I manage the eggplant farm with help from part-timers. The eggplant venture started 15 years ago, with our town's special pickling eggplants known for their excellent flavor. Though they're difficult to grow, they're susceptible to diseases and pests, and they wilt easily. I started selling them in small quantities at local markets when a nearby pickling company approached me for an exclusive contract. The difficult cultivation process meant they offered a much higher price than regular eggplants. I was excited about the opportunity but afraid of failing and being sued for breach of contract. My husband reassured me, saying, "We have rice income to fall back on, so we can try." That's how it began. I worked hard every year to improve cultivation methods, and despite many setbacks, the company grew as they expanded to online sales, and the volume of my eggplants increased. Other companies approached me, but I wasn't interested in expanding. The exclusive contract was more demanding than I had anticipated. While the fixed price was stable, I had to deliver a certain quantity every year. I started to think that once my in-laws retired from farming, my husband and I could take over the rice business, and we could stop the eggplant contract. However, I felt indebted to the company president and continued to supply the best eggplants. Then, last month, everything changed. The president collapsed at the factory and never returned. He passed away last month, right? It's been 49 days already, hasn't it? My mother-in-law murmured. It was such a shock. Such a sudden event. My mother-in-law added sympathetically. It's a relief that there's a successor, but he can't come back for a while, right? To my husband's question, my father-in-law responded. He was training at another pickling company. The president's son, set to take over, is working at another company handling major transactions, so he can't leave yet. While he's away, the president's secretary and the executives tried to keep things running, but the president's wife interfered, causing turmoil. I've heard a bit about it. I wonder if she can't mourn her husband properly. There's much more to do. Everyone nodded in agreement with my mother-in-law's complaints. Anyway, I'll check the situation. It'll be troublesome if they cancel the contract without warning. The next day, I called the president's secretary. "Did you get the call too, Laura? I'm so sorry, you sound exhausted. Are you all right?" The secretary, usually cheerful, sounded quite down. "It's not all right. I think our company is going bankrupt. They've let me go, so I can't help anymore. I'm sorry." "What, you're being let go?" I was shocked. The president's wife was the cause. Without any understanding of management, The president's wife made unreasonable demands and harassed employees. She's always been selfish and difficult. The president kept her away from business matters. But now with him gone, the company is in chaos. She just wants to make money without any regard for the company's well-being. She doesn't understand that a business needs quality employees, not cheap foreign labor. It's a disaster, the secretary lamented. And then she added, "You should just move on, Laura, with your eggplants. You'll easily find new partners, but we had an exclusive deal, and I plan to fulfill it, at least for the late president's sake." The secretary sighed as I mentioned the president's passing. I never expected him to die so suddenly. It's tragic. Now, because of his wife, longtime employees are leaving. The elderly can't work as much as younger workers, and the regular employees are expensive. She wants to hire cheap foreign workers. Our pickles taste is what sets us apart, and experienced staff are key. Even with an exclusive contract, she doesn't get it. It's best to move on. The call left me horrified. I immediately spoke to my husband. "Maybe it's time to cut ties, but we have the contract," my husband muttered, looking troubled. "Yes, we have official documents." A few days later, we received the official notification that the pickling company was ending the contract. What is this? Even an amateur can tell this is nonsense, right? I had always thought the secretary was a decent person, but the documents she handled were so disorganized that I couldn't help but voice my frustration. With both my husband and I resolute in our decision, we knew we weren't in the wrong. Thankfully, it was still early enough in the season to quit, which seemed like the right time. My husband's suggestion to quit weighed heavily on my mind, but I was concerned about the financial hit we'd take during the summer, the part-time workers, and all the other challenges we had faced and experimented with. Things were finally going well, and the idea of being forced to quit for such an unreasonable reason didn't sit well with me. My husband agreed with me. "We'll worry about income and the future later. I can't stand the way they treated you, Laura. It's their loss. They can't just buy cheap, low-quality imports and expect them to be the same as the high-quality, locally produced products we're proud of." "You're right," I replied. So, we made the decision to end the exclusive contract this year and refuse to deliver any more eggplants, even if they begged us. As summer approached, several pickle companies quickly approached us with contract offers after we ended the exclusive agreement. My husband and I carefully reviewed each offer and selected the one with the best terms, which increased our income by about 20%. We found new buyers for our eggplants, and as we worked busily every day, I nearly forgot about the rude president's wife. One day, my mother-in-law came to visit and brought a jar of eggplant pickles. "Laura, this is awful. Look at this, it says locally produced, but that can't be true, right?" She had brought pickles from the pickle company that had used imported eggplants, even though the label claimed they were locally grown. I was surprised when I saw the label. "Let's try it anyway," I said. Following my mother-in-law's suggestion, we all gathered, the family and part-timers, to taste the pickles. The flavor was completely off. "This can't be locally produced. For one thing, these aren't bite-sized. They're using large eggplants, and they're pickling them. It's just a way to trick consumers," my mother-in-law declared, her face stern. "The taste is weird too. It's not just spoiled, it's rotten." One of the part-timers chimed in with his own comment. "Could it be that the president's wife is lying about these imported eggplants being local?" Honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised. A few days later, during dinner, my phone rang again. "Hey, can you pretend you sold me your eggplants?" The voice didn't introduce itself, but I immediately recognized it. It was the president's wife. "I don't remember selling you any eggplants, and you want me to lie about it?" "Yes, if you say so, it'll save our company. Weren't you supposed to never contact me again?" "That was the case, but things have changed. You want money too, right? I'll give you some. It's just a small favor," she said with a tone that tried to involve me in her scheme. "No, thank you," I responded firmly and hung up. I then told my husband and in-laws what had happened, and everyone had a good laugh. My husband seemed particularly amused. "She must have regretted it. There's no way your eggplants are the same as those subpar imports." After my mother-in-law brought over the pickles, I received calls from various people who had learned I was the one who grew the eggplants. According to the current pickle company, they had received a lot of complaints and had even been reported to the authorities. It turned out the pickle company was in trouble for food fraud. A few days later, the phone rang again. "Please testify that those were your eggplants. The police might investigate." I recognized the voice again, and this time it was almost tearful. "I didn't sell them," I replied, hanging up once more. The next day, I received a polite call from a young man who claimed to be the president's son. "I'd like to meet and apologize," he said. We agreed to meet that afternoon. I asked my in-laws to help with the farm work, and my husband and I waited for them to arrive. A young man, another young man, and a well-dressed older woman showed up. The young man was the president's son. The other young man was his secretary, and the woman was the president's wife. The two men were very polite, but the president's wife was cold and refused to acknowledge us. The son insisted that she apologize, and they both bowed deeply, their foreheads touching the floor as they apologized. Despite knowing the situation, the president's son asked, "Is there any way you could supply us with eggplants again?" I refused. "I'm sorry, but that's not possible. You ended our exclusive contract." Though I felt sorry for the son, given the president's wife's behavior and the fact that we already had a contract with another company, it was simply not feasible. He understood, and rather than being upset, he seemed to think it was natural for me to decline. "You're right. I'm sorry for all this. We terminated the contract without proper notice, and we'll pay the penalty as agreed." He gave in easily and began preparing the paperwork with his secretary. The president's wife, however, was stunned. "What are you thinking? We've been ripped off all this time. There's no need to pay the penalty. We got caught, but we can do better next time. It's the importer's fault that so many of the imported eggplants were rotten. If we find a cheaper supplier, we'll be fine." "So you tried to use cheap imports and failed. That's what Laura told you, right?" my husband retorted sarcastically. The two young men agreed, nodding in acknowledgement. I was bothered by the president's wife's comments and asked again, "Are you still planning to label them as locally produced, even if you can't get my eggplants?" "Of course, it's more profitable, and everyone else is doing it," she answered without any hint of remorse. Her attitude angered me, and she began yelling at me. My husband and I were both taken aback. That's when the president's son lost his patience. "Mom, just stop. I only brought you here to apologize, but I'm done with this." After being scolded by her son, the president's wife seemed to snap out of her attitude, her face turning pale and silent. The situation took a dramatic turn. The case was deemed malicious, involving deliberate mislabeling of the product's origin. Both local newspapers reported the police investigation for fraud, and the story became a major issue in the area. The pickle company went bankrupt, and the president's wife was abandoned by her son, living in hiding as she feared prosecution. The president's son and the loyal employees he brought back worked hard to recover from the damage and set up a new company. I received the penalty for the breach of contract, and the situation was resolved. Since then, my son has returned to the farm and plans to take over. He has found a bride who is eager to work on the farm with him. With this happy news, our family's life has become much more enjoyable. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video. Stay stunned.